Alright, we're going to do a quick test of the audio levels. Test, test, test. Alright, that's not bad. Could be louder. Let me boost it just a little bit. Though I don't necessarily want to pick up my kids in the background. So, here we go. Get the headphones off here. Alright, so for tonight, let me bring over the reference that I'm working with here. So a bunch of industrial sites like this, all those pipes and that sort of thing. So I will be looking to combine some of these kind of shape language here, and I want to play with that. So I want to kind of use some of this to make like a mask, and then we'll build off of that. I've got some aircraft carriers and shipping vessels and so forth that I thought would kind of add some material to that industrial feel without being necessarily a building structure, though I suppose they are kind of like floating buildings anyway. A lot of similarities. So we have city shots over here, then we have naval vessels, sunset, and then these power plants. Okay. So we're going to use all of this as inspiration, but we don't need to follow any of them judiciously. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to just block in some just some texture, different colors here, and then I'm going to paint with a mask tonight. I think that would be an interesting way to approach this. I'm having some tablet issues. The buttons on my Wacom don't seem to want to be working right now, and it may be as simple as just restarting, but we can't do that now, so we'll have to deal with it, and hopefully we'll be fine. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of make a mess here of some different hues. Kind of mix some of these together. And then we're going to use this just as a kind of a block-in base to work from. We'll hide this and then we'll reveal it. So you'll see how that works in just a minute. Okay, let me do a new layer. going to switch to the Smudge Brush. I'm actually just going to do sample all. I'm going to start grabbing this and moving it around. And this is just going to add to the soup here. You know that story? Too many babas. It's where all the grandmothers come by, and they all have their own opinion about what should be in the soup, and they all add their own flavor to it. And by the end, it's just a big mess. Nobody likes it. The moral of the story is maybe keep your opinions to yourself and let somebody finish what they started. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, so we're homogenizing this, kind of mashing things together here. Some of these, you know, we'll pull them apart, but I'll have to actually take this background that's below it, maybe bring it above, and then bring it back. No, it's not quite working. Let's try duplicating it, and maybe do. I was thinking maybe soft light, hard light, one of those. Just get that a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so now we've got this block in for background. We'll just grab all this. And actually we might just merge all this together into one thing. Alright, so we'll hide these guys. And then this is our actual image here, actually. I may even mess with this a little further, just to break up that edge a little bit. Whoops. Don't like what happened there. There we go. Okay. That's probably sufficient. We'll go with that. Okay, so now we are going to put a mask on this and invert that mask. And we are going to start to bring in some of these shapes. Could probably build a better brush for this one of these days. Okay, so part of the idea here is we're revealing areas of light and shadow. So we've got these shapes here that imply a relationship between this area that's dark and then this area that's lighter. And if we change this background, we get a completely different effect. You know, so we could actually make this night, right, by switching this, make that dark. And then these areas here that are on this side, and that's our area that's receiving light. Right, so let's continue with this. So we're kind of showing that this right side would be our shadow side, and the light would be coming in from the left. So we bring in some shapes here. This is really starting to feel like one of those street art things where, like, they make a big mess and they cover it up and they, like, you know, throw some aluminum foil on it or something. They start bashing it with their palms, and you start wondering, like, what's wrong with this person? Have they lost it? And they flip it over and it's a picture of some celebrity. And everybody claps and giggles with glee. I'm not the least bit jealous. But anyway, that's the kind of vibe I'm getting out of this. Like, you know, we made that little under painting there, and now we're revealing it as we go. I may go back to what we had with the lighter side being kind of the background, and this being the shadow. I don't know. I mean, the way that the light and shadow would fall, you know, it would be different, and, you know, it's not completely 100% interchangeable, but at this stage we can go back and forth without much concern for it. What is this guy even doing right now? Does this make any sense? I make no promises. Alright, let's swap that background color. See how we're feeling about it. I kind of like this just muted gray. I don't know, maybe something's wrong with me. He's in a gray phase. Remember when Eric used to make colorful art? You know, the kind that people could appreciate. What happened to that guy? That's probably the first thing in the scene here that establishes any sense of scale. I mean, obviously these would be, kind of rooftops in the background, but this really tells us that the character can interact with that portion there. And that's an important cue. So we got to bear that in mind. I can't be going all willy-nilly with these things. Well, truthfully, we can at this stage, but I say that a lot. Like, oh, we can get away with it now. We'll just have to fix it later. That's the beauty of digital, is that you actually can get away with a lot of that. However, maybe we should just fix it. Maybe we should figure out where we're headed now, then we can just go there. I'm going to see if I can go kind of back and forth with this area right here. And by back and forth, I mean I'm going to block in this shadow and then switch to the lights so that I can cut that sharp angle there. That's some sneaky business. Sneaky fella. Can't trust him. Okay, I do like that. These little bits of light, like some kind of catwalks or something, catching some light here. We'll switch our color again, or rather our lights and darks again. We'll cut that out there. This is starting to remind me of this game that my brother and I used to play, and it's actually what got me into digital art and art for video games. And that game was called Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight. It had this really kind of dystopian feel to it. A lot of old, it was like these old cities, you know, but old technologically advanced, but around for a long time, you know, so you're kind of in the underworld of them. And, I don't know. Played that when I was a kid, and that was like a formative time for me, partly because of my age and partly because it was, you know, where I first learned how to like kind of take something apart. Well, not take something, but take a game apart, take a computer program apart and look into it, see how it works, and then kind of you unmask the reality that it's really not that bad. It's kind of accessible, you know. I'm going to change this. This was a, you know, we were talking about that as a ladder, and I'm going to change it to a maybe a series of pipes or something, like a drainage or a septic system or some kind of fluid thing going on there. We don't got to tell everyone what's in the pipes. We just have to let them know that there are pipes going that way, doing stuff over there. And maybe we can reference that, you know, we do some small ones back here, and that would show like associated shapes, right? Pipes coming out here, and they go down into that area. Maybe they pop back up right there, come down. Trying to get a sense of scale here. Sounds like my son upset about something up there. These I think are too large here. one of the things I want to be careful of as I'm doing this, I mean, I want to have these objects in the background that are kind of, a little more abstract. But I want to be careful not to get too deep into this motif of like a massive superstructure in the background. I think that's well, when I look at other work, I tend to see that, and then I can feel my own inclination to go that way, to push these forms just to fill the space in the background, but you lose the sense of scale. And I don't want to do that. Be careful. I think to my comments earlier, you gotta be wondering, where's the part where we flip it over and it all makes sense? Like I said, no promises. But I do think you can approach these with a certain level of abstraction, and then your eye starts to catch things, gravitate to them, assign meaning to them, and just kind of let it go, let it do its thing, I mean, something here, as I'm looking at these, like thinking of these as associated shapes, right? So you have like these two forms. You got this thing here, make another one, right? now we're going to cut in some of these vertical shapes here. Smaller, kind of not quite detail, but it's going to imply another level of scale. There's an idea of like a 1, 2, 3 read. I know I've mentioned this before, but these different levels of detail that we look at things, kind of levels of resolution, if you will, where we see the whole mass, and then we see the masses within that mass, and then these smaller details. And I think it's easy for us to break that down to kind of 3 levels. And I say that really simply because we just seem to work that way. We just seem to want things to be simplified down to 2 or 3 points, that we can easily digest and bring to mind easily without having to unpack a long lecture or something. Just give me a quick 3-point. What do I need to do? Okay. We do a few things up here. Some spaceships or something. I don't know. Now I think we can paint in a either light or fog, right? So we go with a light. Let's say we have a city lights here that are, that might be too aggressive. I suppose we can dial it back if we want. Get those areas of shadow. I like the idea of doing a fog or something like that, but I want to be careful not to lean on that too much. You know, not every environment has that thick of an atmosphere. You know, so sometimes you have to show scale, distance a different way. You know, not simply through you know, a thick fog. That can be a challenge. You know, you think about it in terms of what tools do you lean on to accomplish a certain result. And I guess what I'm saying is some tools work in many cases, and then there are areas in which they break down, and I want to be prepared for some of those. That being said, we can give it a try, and if it works, then great, and if it fundamentally changes the character of the scene in a way that we don't care for, then it's got to go. So some of these areas I'm just trying to get lined up with the shadow shape behind it, so then they correspond to each other. Right, for example, here, so we got this profile and this comes around. So if we can kind of match that and then let that shadow come through, excuse me. And this is what I was hoping to accomplish with a fog layer, but this can kind of help us get into similar territory. Okay, I think these, like all this stuff back here, is too bright, and that kind of bothers me. It's funny because I say that, and then I'm like adding more, but I don't know. Hopefully this isn't autopilot. It just felt like it needed something. You know, that the shapes back there were too large. I'll go with an eraser. Start chopping away at it. See if we can bring the scale down a little bit. job. See you later. I don't want to be too protective of this work, right? I mean, you feel like you put all this time in, you gotta save every little bit, but I don't know, maybe you put all the time in, you know, putting all this stuff in. It would be a shame not to still be aggressive and creative in the process. You know, there's destruction inherent in the creative process. I'm going to shift that color. I'm just going to do it with a hue saturation layer. I'm going to pin it down to that. We'll just name this back light. Actually, it's more of an underlight, so we'll call it underlight. What a novel idea. Call it what it is. Alright. Oh yeah, kind of like that red. That's like who would make their city with all the lights being red? That would be like very bad ruler. Like our identity is as a people is to have this creepy dystopian red city. But that's how you know it's a bad guy. Does look cool though. Alright, we'll go with that. And then I'm going to adjust this just to do it. Why not? Go all the way black. That's like a little too 1990s CG there. But if we go with like a light complement in that background, you know, to the red, that could work a little bit. Has potential. Maybe. We'll do that. We'll step back. Control Z. Yeah, you know, I can't really decide because I like the contrast of this. It makes it punchier, but I feel like this is closer to something that I could paint over and make, you know, come to life in a more interesting way. So I'm going to play with that. Let's switch over to some aggressive brushes here. And this one I'm going to go with a more, you can see this is a more sandy kind of color that I'm bringing in. Go back to my smudge brush. I just want to see something real quick. Hide that. Okay. And we're just going to smudge all this back here. And I'm thinking of this as more of a sky, though I should actually do like a proper sky layer. That would make sense. Somebody should suggest that. Do a sky layer. Do it right. Okay, and what would that look like? Basically, I would start with a fill, and then I would mask it, and deal with it as one object rather than all of this. And actually, I'm just going to do that right now. So we'll go, we'll leave that there, but we'll go new layer, new fill layer, solid fill. This is going to be our background sky, and feeling kind of weird, so maybe we'll do this weird orangish color. Not too Halloween. Some kind of weird salmon, pink, peach. I don't know what other descriptors are out there. Okay, so now we can paint this in as a mask. Actually, I'll just start with a lasso, and we'll lasso a portion of it in. Again, you want to get these sharp angles, then you just start at some point and then let go. Right. That's not really what I wanted there. But we'll take it. Okay. Go here. To there. Some of these I do want to keep, you know, I want to keep that brushwork there, so I don't know how much I want to get into, you know, particularly hard angles and so forth. This might be too, I might be giving this too much time. Let's go a little more aggressive here. I'll just grab all that. And then I guess we can cut away from it if we want later. So anyway, that's what we're going to start with for our mask. And we'll cut that in. And maybe we'll pin this. We'll pin that to that. Nah, we'll leave that unpinned. I think that's alright. So when we get up into that area, I don't like it that much. And we'll do one. We'll do one that's below down here, and then we'll do one that's pinned, and then this one I'm gonna homogenize like this. It's mainly this horizontal band, like you want it to read across the backs of these buildings so that it doesn't jump up and down, you know, like from here to there, you know. So you want, like, if we're going to have this area show through a little bit, we want to have it kind of show through there, so it corresponds, you know, these are related. It's not like broken against the buildings. That's going to ruin the illusion. So you'll blend these down. Mix them together. Blend that across. We could shift this. That's kind of cool. Do another one here. Maybe we'll grab that mix right there, and we'll start blending some of these in. These ones in the foreground, well, they're not really foreground, but closer to us than these farther buildings. I'm gonna go with this richer red. Kind of like the feel of that. Okay, jump back over to this. Let's see what would be good. Mix there. Just mixing those colors on right on the canvas. Why not? We're all adults here. We can do whatever we want. You want to mix your colors on a canvas, no one's going to stop you. Okay, and then I think we should associate some of these shapes back here. So we've got these shapes in the foreground that are kind of more rounded domes, and then in the background, of course, I've got these like skyscraper type things that are much more aggressive shapes. So we'll start bringing those back in. This. Pin that down. Bring some of that red in there. And tighten it right up. Okay, now I think we need to like mix some of these colors in here. Get some of this working, homogenized, and so forth. Do we want that complement? Kind of a muted purple gray. To mix some of those in together. That's not so bright and powerful there. Okay. Maybe some areas in here. Yeah, don't really like what happened there. Bring that back. Yeah, I don't know whether to keep that. Sharp angles there. Continue these domes. Or how I want to address them. Want to play with that some more. Okay, continue refining some of these shapes. And I think we need to kind of slowly bring this background. We'll separate all these items just carefully. There are some things that I think we would benefit from keeping them kind of loose and undefined, where the edges change. But I think we need to balance that out with adding more depth to the scene. Not sure if I like that. I do like that. Really rich red in the background there. Maybe bring that into some of these closer areas here. Would be interesting. Maybe some of these areas of shadow should have some. Erase that out there. And then I think we need to kind of start thinking about rhythms here. So how do these, You know, how do these red dots here, how do they lead you around the canvas? You know, so does it go? Does it bring you around into these different leading the eye down these different kind of avenues of the city, right? And, okay, it's kind of cool. I like the idea of showing these as like pass-throughs, you know, so that they are kind of coming forward in space. And all this stuff is like behind it. Start to obscure some of this stuff with a favorite fog. Though I think that's, like I was saying earlier, perhaps more of a cop-out. So, we'll cut that out. Go with some harder color choices there rather than doing too much blending. Now we can cast some shadows here. That in front or behind? I think that should be in front. So you step back there. Cut that straight down here. Work the shadow the other direction. I'm gonna simplify some of these over here. Just send them back to that dark background color. Let's just see about playing with some of these forms here. Even that's pretty extreme. You know, I was talking about earlier about those kind of superstructures or whatever, you know, in the background that I don't want to be too aggressive. Just glancing over at the chat. Hello from Texas. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining in tonight. What's it like down in Texas right now? It is freezing cold in New York. And it's kind of, can't make up its mind whether it wants to be rain or snow. And I'm not going to say that that's the worst. It's definitely not the worst, but it does not make for great road conditions. Not that I'm going anywhere. a lot of staying at home lately. Really, at this stage, this is, well, actually, frankly, most all of these steps along the way have been just kind of playing and seeing what we end up with. And so now we're doing that in the background. Alright, just checking back on the chat there. It said, expecting snow in the west, would love snow here, love the painting so far, very interesting. I'd like to know more of the story. Well, at this point, there really isn't much of a story. What I started with, I'll back it up here just a second. Let's grab all this here. And we'll group that, hide it. So we just started with this kind of mess of a variety of hues and so forth. And then it worked in this mask. So we hid all of that and then started bringing this in and just started to feel, you know, does this have a feeling of some, like a space city or something, you know. And I had mentioned earlier in the video that it was really starting to feel like this game that I used to play. It was a game that actually kind of got me started in art, and that was Jedi Knight Dark Forces, and it was an interesting game. It's funny, I went back and looked at it again, and it hasn't aged particularly well. But I suppose that's to be expected. But yeah, it does have kind of that feel to it, and so maybe that's subconsciously what's directing it. Let's see. Actually, kind of like that. I mean, it's interesting to have these really saturated colors, but there's something a little more natural. You know, even though this is supposed to be like an alien planet or something, there's something a little more natural to that kind of lower light. We could work in the complement, but I don't think we really want to do that. Kind of liking this being a pretty fairly monochromatic color scheme. So I think I need to separate these shapes a little bit more. I mean, I like what's going on, but I think that it could make more sense. So I'm just going to start blocking in. I just grab a little bit of that background color and bring that in over top of this. What feels like I'm going lightly, but sure doesn't look like it once it hits the canvas. And as I always say, I'll probably be dialing that back once we get this blocked in. We can assess it and kind of work that back. It's not so aggressive. But I do like to just jump in there and see, you know, how these affect the overall composition. You don't want to get too locked into what you have, that you can't, you know, approach something better if it presents itself. So, okay, I will pull that back. And then I think I'll go heavy with it in just a few areas. See if we can push and pull this background. And some of these areas I do like that they're kind of getting lost, you know, into, you know, the edges kind of blend into each other. And I think on probably a separate layer, I'll want to maybe encourage that a little more. But see if we can define a few more of these silhouettes, and then go from there. All right. So let's see what we've got when we bring it to full opacity. So I think we can make a few quick adjustments to this. So we'll blend some of these up. Break some of these edges that we made. And then, of course, we can adjust the hue, but I'm thinking that the next step would be to just change the blend mode so that we're allowing some of these other lights and stuff to come through. So lighter color, I think, allows that red to come through. No, actually doesn't seem to be making that difference. Color dodge versus nothing. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I mean, it kind of homogenizes the colors, but not really what I'm going for. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. Hard light, that's interesting. Kind of like that pin light. Pin light tends to work out for me. I don't know if it's just the way that I approach painting, and then the way that this affects the layers, but it seems to just hit these darkest areas, and it doesn't really do much to the lighter tones, but I like the effect that it gives. Alright, let's play with a few more of these. And we'll mix and match the stack. Like that. And this one I might just do luminosity. Let the hue and all that stuff be preserved. Smudge some of this around. again with, you know, deciding what edges are lost and found, right? And then, of course, I'm going to dial this back. So I say this usually, I forget to say it till the end, but you know, with any of this, if you are an artist, if you're interested in you know, creating in any form, you know, I think that the best approach for me has been simply to work it out just by doing it, you know, just by, I know that sounds maybe too cliche, but like just jumping in with a project. And if you have an aim in mind, you know, like I'm going to paint this subject or try this technique, then there's only so much study or YouTube videos or whatever that are going to help until, you know, that'll only take you so far until you just have to kind of get your hands dirty and like learn kinesthetically. That's definitely something that I've experienced. So like I can overdo it on the, you know, material that I'm trying to learn, you know, other artists' way of working, or maybe a technique or something, and will often underemphasize the actual process of, well, the practice, the discipline of it. And there really is something about learning a subject, knowing a subject more deeply through the physical interaction with it, you know, kind of knowing what the paintbrush is going to do intuitively because your hand has made the motion and you've seen the mark, and those things are now connected, they're linked together in your mind subconsciously, as opposed to having the kind of analytical approach that you would maybe pick up from a YouTube video or something. Anyway, that's a long way to get to the point. The point being, you know, if you have your own projects, I would recommend that you have them open right now and, you know, be playing with them. You know, if you want to try what I'm doing, then, you know, try it right now. And if you're interested in doing your own thing and you're just here to kind of see someone else work and kind of hear their thought process and so forth, then, you know, develop your own project and your own craft while that's happening. And by the end of it, you'll most certainly have something you know, to look back on and see what you accomplished, right? And that does, for me, that does wonders, you know, to my mentality as an artist. That, like, you get to the end of the week. I've said this a dozen times, but you get to the end of the week and you say, well, I'm an artist, so where's the art, right? Like, you expect that you would have created something. And obviously it doesn't always work, like clockwork. But in my opinion, the greatest thing to do is just buckle down and start doing something and then see what emerges. And that, not to drive the point too hard, but that would be the whole exercise of tonight. Like, this was not a plan. This was not anything more than, a couple pictures of power plants and aircraft carriers, and then a technique, and then just kind of seeing what happened, right? Seeing what would come from that. And finding it satisfying just to see where it goes, see where it leads. Okay, this is luminosity. I'm just kind of pushing that back and forth to see what we get. Do another one, set that to, oh, that's kind of cool. Pin light again. So just checking in on the chat. Said, good advice in trying to make a transition from drawing on paper to digital. Yeah, it depends, I guess, how long you've been at it. I found that for me it was like at least a month of practicing with the Wacom before I felt like I was getting anything out of it. Anything that was like an intentional mark. I wanted to make that mark on the paper. Or on the digital canvas, I should say. I think in some ways things have improved. Like if you've worked on an iPad at all, I think that's much more intuitive than the Intuos. But once I got used to using an Intuos, I actually kind of like the fact that my hand is not in the way of the drawing. When I go back and forth between digital and physical mediums, sometimes it annoys me that I can't see through my hand. As crazy as that sounds. Looks like Photoshop. Oh, great. Just crashed. So let's see if we have a autosave at some point. So going back and forth between digital and physical mediums, I think you benefit from both. In the physical medium, I think you have to be more decisive. You have to know where you're headed and be confident in your mark making. Whereas in digital, you have a lot of freedom to explore, and that's a good thing. But it can often lead to not particularly confident paintings, and I would say that doesn't necessarily seem intuitive. Like, it would seem like you'd be more confident in digital because you can undo any mistake or whatever. But it's often, I would say it's more like you're searching around, or at least this has been my experience. It's like you're searching around for the composition, for the kind of the juice of the painting, whatever, you know, whatever makes it alive and interesting. I mean, for point in case, you asked right off the bat what the story is behind this, and you know, the truth is we're just kind of exploring, right? And so in traditional, you know, you can explore, obviously, but I would tend to approach it more with a plan, right? You know, it would be kind of foolish to just jump into something and have a permanent mark and have no idea where you're going, you know. I mean, there are some cases in which you can do that, but generally speaking, my traditional work is much more measured and thought out, and my digital work is much more exploratory. Sorry if I'm rambling tonight. That's kind of I seem to be taking the long way around to get to the points, but yeah. So as far as making the transition, I think it depends partly on what software you're using. So you know, obviously I'm using Photoshop here. Procreate on the iPad is great. I've been using that, not as much lately, but I used it quite a bit on some plein air stuff. Actually, I don't think I've uploaded much of any of that in its like full form. I had meant to do like a voiceover on some of those, but I had done a whole series of paintings in Procreate probably 2 years ago now. I would take my daughter to, my one daughter I would take to Grandma's house in the morning, and then I would take the other one to preschool, and there was just a little bit of gap of time in between, and there was a park, or more of a nature preserve, between the two spots on the drive. And so we would stop there and do like a quick 15-minute sketch, and then I'd go drop her off at preschool, and then I'd go finish the painting at home. And I did that. I mean, there's probably 20 or 30 of those paintings. And the cool thing in Procreate, of course, is that everything is recorded, and so you can play them back. So I've been meaning to go back and do a voiceover to kind of explain what was going on, explain some of the things that you don't see in the image, but that were around in the scene, you know, or in the atmosphere, you know. And anyway, all that to say that those were all done on the iPad, Procreate for the iPad, and that is I think, a nice kind of streamlined program. Like, it's not too it's not trying to be a big, powerful Photoshop or something like that. It's, at least in its current form, I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's like you have brushes, layers, and a few blend modes that any Photoshop user would be familiar with. yeah, I think if it gets too, I mean, I know there's a little more you can do with it in terms of animation and stuff. I really hope they don't get too aggressive with the features, because one of the things I really like about it is that it just does what it does well, whereas there are too many applications that try to do everything. Okay, anyway, so yeah, transitioning to digital, I would say just keep at it. You know, there's a couple months of just like your brain adjusting to, like, you know, my hand is working down here, but I'm seeing it happen up there. You know, like that's not intuitive. Definitely, Photoshop is not an intuitive program. It's powerful, and once you get the hotkeys and all that kind of stuff, like there's so much that you can do quickly. But again, that was another, I would say, like a separate month to 2 months for me when I started to get that kind of second nature, at least the important parts of it. And the more you explore Photoshop, the more you'll find all these different interesting features that you can exploit. Especially with digital painting, because you can get like a lot of free texture and random kind of randomness going on with just a few Photoshop tricks. So whether that's, you know, using your filters or these layer styles down here, and the layer styles, you can get a lot of mileage out of that. You know, kind of casting shadows and that sort of thing, at least enough to get a painting blocked in very quickly. But I know I'm kind of rambling on. I think if I were to nail it down, I'd say give yourself the grace to learn it and to get used to it. And then once you've got the basics, you know, down to where you're not struggling with the interface, and you're not struggling with the inputs, then from there, I would recommend that you explore how to exploit the medium as much as possible. You know, do you want digital to look traditional and just be quicker and easier, or do you want to get everything out of digital that you can't get in a traditional medium? I think pretty often we approach things with this, I think we idealize one thing or another, right? Like we idealize the old painterly, you know, oil painting style or whatever, without really stopping to ask, you know, what are the benefits and the limits of that medium? And the same thing with digital. It's like working digitally just because, I don't know, just because it's interesting, or because everyone's doing it, or because maybe there's a fear that, I mean, you know, personally, like with digital and physical mediums, you know, is there a fear that this is kind of the future and people aren't going to accept the older stuff or whatever? And I think those kind of things go both ways, right? Like, you just have to figure out why you're using one medium in a particular moment. And I don't think you have to lock into one or the other. It's just, what does this do that the other one can't, you know? I mean, so to tease that out, you know, like oil painting, actually I just did this for a Christmas present. A friend of mine asked for a painting, and he was looking for a digitally painted scene that he could get a print of, and that's fine. But I advised him. I said, if that's what you want, that's fine. We can do that. But if you're just looking for one image, like you want me to paint this digitally, and then we're going to put it on your wall, print it and put it on your wall, that's not going to hold value the same way that an oil painting would. It's a metal print or a canvas, printed on canvas. Whereas, an oil painting, this is like an original, one of a kind. That has more value than something that you could print, a million times, and that probably loses a fair amount of fidelity between digital and the printed version. So, what we ended up doing is I mocked it all up digitally because it's so quick, and you can make iterations, for free and fast. And so we did the first 2 passes digitally, and then I finished it in oil. And even the oil version, I did 2 versions. One that followed the concept that we had worked on digitally, and then another one that was just more exploratory. I just kind of let whatever happened happen. I was exploring how the colors would interact, the pigments and so forth, because obviously there's a trade-off between digital and physical. There are certain color combinations you can get in digital that are going to show up on the screen that are going to be very difficult to reproduce in pigments. So, I explored that a little bit and gave myself some freedom, did a second painting to do that. And so anyway, long story short, because it was a one-off and it was like just something he wanted to have on his wall, it just made so much more sense to me for that to be in the physical medium, but for the exploration phases and so forth to be digital was totally fine, because it's fast. I had another thought in there, but I lost it. That's fine, I guess. I guess I consider some of these things, I've been doing a bit of 3D printing and so forth, and that's one of the considerations with 3D printing. Is this just a novelty, or does this present some options? Does it solve a problem that some other medium does not solve? Oh yeah, the thought that I kind of lost there was that, with physical work and oil painting, there really is something to the presence, the physical presence of that painting on the wall, and not just the the physical reality that it's there, but like there's a certain magic to it that it like changes in the light and so forth. That's something you don't really get in digital. In digital, there's the image, and that's what you've got. in physical medium, there's something about putting it in the right space in the room, or lighting it in a gallery or something that kind of takes on a different life. But I don't want to come off as completely bashing digital and talking about all the benefits of physical medium. I've worked pretty extensively in digital, and there's so much about it that is wonderful. I talked about 3D printing, and that's something that's been really exciting, to be going from a kid playing this game and thinking, oh, it would be cool to edit this game, to starting to do paintings and 3D models, and getting started with a career in games, and then now being able to take all that digital knowledge and experience and translate it into a physical product is really exciting. That's to see those two worlds bridged, and just the speed at which you can prototype is, that alone is so valuable. I could work in clay on some of these designs, and it would take forever, but you could throw it together fairly quickly in a sculpting program like ZBrush, and then if you know what you're doing, get your supports laid out, throw it on the 3D printer, and later that day have the physical model in hand. And these are really exciting times. To emphasize that point, if you haven't seen it, I know I've talked about it before. I've been working on this brand, Fantastic Tanks. It's a bunch of kind of bizarre, funny, satirical tank designs, and I don't know. There's some kind of charm to them. They really, I find them funny. But that started as a few sketches in my pocket sketchbook, and then a couple years back, I painted one, and I was in a kind of a live stream like this, and some friends commented that I don't know, they just saw the charm in it and enjoyed it. And anyway, so fast forward, got into 3D printing, used these tanks as like a project to learn on, and I really just really enjoyed it. And wherever I shared it, it got good responses. People liked it, laughed, and so I've been developing that, and have built a line of these miniatures that I print, and since they're in a digital format, of course I can have other people print them as well, though at the moment it's just I just do them all here, but that has picked up a fair amount of interest in the toy photography community, which I didn't realize it was a thing until I started doing this. But there's a group, fairly active, lively group of photographers that just do toy photography. They set them up in these different scenes and tell these different stories with them and stuff, which is really where what I wanted to see happen with developed them, but I really wanted to see what other people would do with them, like, you know, as little models, how they would paint them, you know, like do like zebra stripes or a taxi or, you know, whatever. And then so to see the toy photo community pick them up and you know, start telling their own stories with them. It's really cool. Well, anyway, all that to say that that would not have been possible not that long ago. You know, the fact that the technology and the outlet for digital art has progressed to that stage, you know, has allowed for that project to exist. You know, if the digital format weren't this developed, I don't know, I'd probably still be working at the factory, you know. So that's, I'm not going to bash either traditional or digital mediums. Like, they have their place. It's just a matter of determining what their benefit is. Like, what do they bring to, what do they offer? What do they bring to the artist toolkit, you know? I kind of like the idea of this being like maybe on some kind of a reflective plane here or something. I might play with that. So just coming back to the chat, said, if that's cool, I wonder how it will be 100 to 200 years from now. Smaller dwellings, no prints or paintings on the walls. I don't know about that. You know, I think we'll always make art. I think we'll always make originals. Though, that being said, I think that's a really interesting point. Like, it's an interesting thought exercise. When you look at all the things we're doing now, and you ask, like, what will this look like to archaeologists when they dig this up? You know, when they see, like, Mickey Mouse or, like, Facebook memes, you know? Like, how are they going to interpret that? You know, if you lose the context, then it just looks like some really strange religion or something, you know? Yeah, so I was looking at the comments. Looks like a new city built on top of a much older one. Yeah, that was kind of the, you know, earlier in the stream I had mentioned that the cities in that game that seem to be subconsciously inspiring this did have this feel of being, you know, they were technologically advanced but just really old. Like, they just had that feel that they were like grungy, you know. And I do really enjoy archaeology and, you know, history, and seeing how cultures have built upon each other and stuff. And so that is an interesting theme, an interesting point you bring up, and that would be fun to work into it. I wouldn't say that it was a conscious effort to do that, but I do like that idea. Yeah, it's interesting to see, you know, those old cultures that these cities that are mounds, and you can excavate down and see the the previous generation that the city is built on top of. It's just mind-blowing that yeah, just an interesting thought, and your mind kind of can chase that to all different imaginary things. I think that would be really difficult to be in archaeology, because I would want to just make stuff up. Like, oh, this is so cool. It looks like, I mean, I guess that you kind of see it, like if you watch, Discovery or the History Channel or whatever. It's like they'll find a bone fragment, something that kind of looks like a flute, and then they'll make up this whole story about a hunter merchant, and his kid gave him the flute before he left, and then he, ran into trouble on the way. And so, yeah, it's like, well, maybe. Probably not. But I would totally fall prey to that kind of just letting my imagination go. I'm going to start erasing some of these, bringing them back so they're not as strong. I do really like this idea of having them in the background there. All these little lights to kind of fill out that there's so much more activity going on back here. Well, I do think this is probably nearing the end. Let's see what I want to add to this. It would probably be a good idea to at least look away for a second and reassess. Because your eyes get used to seeing this, and then I miss a lot because I'm just not paying attention for it, or has kind of I've gotten kind of numb to seeing it now. So one thing that a lot of artists do digitally is they'll flip the canvas. Oops, wrong. I did just the layer. Go to image, horizontal. So I flip the canvas, and then it's kind of like you're seeing it with fresh eyes. Mistakes pop out at you. So having flipped it, it looks like everything's kind of leaning to the left. So I might play with that. Bring in some of these shapes. So I'm using the Smudge Brush for this, which it might be a little reckless. This is, you'll see the strength is set very high, and then the brush itself is just basically a rectangle. And what this is doing, I'm actually applying all of this to a new layer, so I'm not really adjusting everything beneath it. But this just kind of makes it easy to move things around a little bit. Also, it lets me kind of chop up the silhouette a little bit. And I can come back and erase these if I want to draw out the original more. So I'm going to try not to lose the flow of the original, but bring back some of these bring some of these forms into, or shapes rather, to adjust the composition. So mainly I'm just trying to pull the bases of the building out to the left to try to balance out that kind of left-leaning issue there. And this definitely can happen in my work, like because I'm not really using the rulers and all that kind of clean linear marquee tools and so forth. I mean, I can use them, but I just have gotten used to painting things in manually, which to some degree I think gives things a little more life, but it can lend itself, of course, to these kind of human error things that you got to come back and fix. Maybe it's not human error, it's just Eric error. You get that hard shadow against the softer transition here. I can work that out with the smudge tool. But and the nice thing here is, you can smudge some of these things around on a new layer. So you're kind of grabbing what's below it, duplicating it, and you know, moving it around, mixing it, and then you can come back and erase that. But, you know, if I'm using this comb eraser here, I can exploit that for texture. Again, talking about how you can use digital in its strengths. You know, there's all these little tricks and stuff that give you a lot of free texture. Granted, you know, physical medium, there's a lot of tricks to get free texture too that you can't do in digital, but you got to find what each one does. Okay, we'll go back to flip these back. Image, flip canvas horizontally. Okay, I'm going to make some color adjustments here. Sorry, just saw something there I wanted to address. Alright, so we'll start with curves, I guess. This is all kind of in the dark range. And this is actually something I've been thinking about recently, because what I'll do with a lot of my images is I'll do the full range. You know, try to get, you know, something super punchy like that, you know. And I'm finding that I don't know that I really like that, you know. I like to have maybe a high key or low key. This is kind of my default because you know, it just you know, it makes it pop. It's interesting like that. And you know, I would admit, like, you know, the colors are richer, the contrast is deeper. But I do want to explore this kind of world of, I don't know, world, but this school of thought of you know, high key and low key paintings, where you're maybe starting at the middle and moving over rather than using the full range and just the emotion and you know, the feel that you can get out of that. So let's see if I just do luminosity. Here's something too to bear in mind. So I just did this curves layer, and you can fine tune those. They don't have to be exactly sorry, I just want to fix this real quick. They don't have to be exactly sorry, this is bothering me. They don't have to be you don't have to use them fully. Like you can just select the channels that you want that to work with. So I'm going to do that real quick because I'm trying to talk about something, but I'm doing something else. So all right, so I've got my curves layer, and it's set to normal. But I can go in and selectively say, you know, I only want this to change the hue, or I only want it to change the saturation, or the color, or the luminosity. Right, so you can see from luminosity to normal, see that's changing both saturation and the luminosity. Whereas, you know, saturation or hue, or the combination being color, so change just the color versus normal, you know, or just the color versus no effect at all. See, it's all that's really doing is bumping up saturation there if you set it to that mode, and that may be what you want. You know, when you're doing these curve layers, it's interesting to see or to analyze what is it about that change that is interesting or good or or desirable. Was it the color contrast that was interesting, the additional kind of saturation that made it feel richer? Was it the levels, the contrast between lights and darks, or was it the combination of all those things? And so it's nice to be able to come back and selectively, to look through those and make a decision about how you want that to work, or what specifically about that change you enjoyed, and then kind of eliminate the rest of those changes. Okay, so we've done that. Now let's go to color balance. I do kind of like the idea of adding more of this cool tone into there to make these reds pop more. But we'll play with it. I feel like this currently is lending itself to a lot of different options. A homogeneous red, red yellow, or analogous, I guess, or a complementary, red green, or even like a red teal, red blue. I think there's a lot of options for it. Somewhere between here and here, I think they're both nice. They give a different impression. A different. They kind of tell a different story. Yeah, I don't know. Guess you gotta kind of pull the trigger on one, huh? We'll go there for now. And again, kind of come through and see what was it about that change that I liked. So if we break it down into these: hue, saturation, color, luminosity, or normal. Kind of like color for the background, and then normal for the rest of it. Normal or luminosity. So I'm going to do a split here. So we'll do luminosity for that. Do another one where just do color, and I'm going to split the image. So we'll go like this. I think this is probably about where I want to make the cut. Oops. And so we'll make that our mask here. This one's color, right? So we want to invert that. So Control I switches that. And we'll move that mask over there. do Control I on that one. And that one's luminosity, which I suppose we could do color to get them kind of close. And of course we can blend these. Right? So, well, I did kind of like. Is that too much? We'll do luminosity on this, and we'll start blending. So get our smudge brush, turn off sample all layers so that we're just working with that mask. And then we're going to smudge this up and down like this. To break up that hard edge, that sharp edge that we defined there. Maybe bring it into the shadow shapes here. Okay, and then do the opposite here. Bring this one. Blend this in a little bit here. And I'm going to go just a little bit more random with this. I'm not trying to follow the forms too much. Somewhere in there. This one maybe. I don't like it getting too deep into the darks there, so I'm going to bring those up just a little bit. Like that. And just to explain what I did there, so you double click the layer on the side here, you get the blend modes, and then you change this blend if right here. So it's gray, and then you can grab these regions, and so, oh no. Well, let's see if we survive again. Well, you can see that gave us a crash, but the blend mode's there. If you do that blend if option, that'll allow you to selectively blend it based on the colors below it or the colors on the layer. So we'll see how far back was our last autosave. Maybe getting a little too brazen with this. Have too many things open and so forth. That's not bad. Okay, so this was set to color. This one's set to luminosity, so we change that to normal. This one we dialed back a little bit. I'm going to close this. And this one we set to normal and blended out the shadow areas, so hopefully we don't crash this time. It's the definition of insanity, right? It's doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Okay. didn't crash. All right. That normally does not crash. It's just I have a lot of things open, and this is a huge file, by the way. So we're looking at this at 6%. If I zoom in, full size, let's see, 100% right there. And so obviously we've got lots of layers, different blend modes, and it's a very large file. So once we start doing fancy tricks, it's gonna get unhappy. Okay, I think this is probably, I'm going to zoom out a bit here, a fairly decent place to stop. I might smudge some of this down more. I could use more blending. Could use a overlay layer. Always do that. So with overlay, usually come in and grab a soft brush, like airbrush here, and so it's set to overlay. Overlay, if you've worked with Photoshop at all, what you're really dealing with is you've got middle gray right here. And so if you paint overlay with middle gray, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to do anything. But if you go higher than middle gray and you paint, it'll lighten up the light areas. It'll pump them up. And if you go below middle gray, it'll darken it. Looks like my Photoshop is catching up here, so we might have to just call this. Wait for it. Oh, you know what happened? I wasn't on my paintbrush, I was on the smudge brush, and so that's why it's giving us a hard time. This would be a wonderful time to take a drink, maybe grab some snack or something. We'll wait for the computer to come back. It's crazy to think that, this is kind of what happens to employees sometimes. Like when I was working at the factory. Instead of accidentally asking a computer to do something that you didn't intend for it to do, and then it spends, all of 5 minutes trying to figure out what it was that you asked, and then it comes back, nothing's going to happen when this smudge goes through. It's kind of like a metaphor for, spending your morning on one task that you find out that your boss never intended for you to do. Good times. Come on, Photoshop, you can do it. Come back to us. Well, I guess while we're waiting, I could talk about some of the things that I've been working on. I mentioned Fantastic Tanks. That's fantastictanks.com, and I intend to update that soon with more information to explain the whole world and the IP a little more. But right now I've got 3 models on there. The puff tank, Brian, which is like a depressed office worker tank, and then the barn tank. And there's like a whole bunch more that are coming down the line. And I painted some of these on these live streams. One was the it was like a sea, deep sea tank. So it was like had like a turtle body with like squid tentacle legs, and like a shipwreck for the turret. And we did the imperialist tank, which was kind of like a Napoleonic dragoon design, designed into a tank. And there's, I mean, literally hundreds of tank designs that I've been playing with, and I have some guys that are working with me. Tim Biscalis, you can check him out at 4Nation Design on Instagram. I think that may be his website as well. He's done a bunch of the decal work. So we print these things out at like 4 centimeters tall, and we'll airbrush them. Another artist friend of mine, Joel Melindwa, will help me with the painting, airbrushing, and so forth. And we like to like paint them in pretty bright, kind of bold, vivid colors, and then we bring in these decals to put all the numbering and insignias and all that kind of stuff on them. And the result is, I'm pretty excited about how they're coming out. But at this point, I think the site, I'll need to update it to explain more what's going on, because currently, what you see is the models, I think for the average consumer, they need a little more information on what it is that they're seeing and how to interact with the brand. But that's something that I've been working on, and I would invite anyone to go check that out. So that's fantastictanks.com. And at this current stage, we'll be putting out a few more models and then redesigning our packaging. And then we'll be looking for early adopters, monthly supporters. We kind of want to do the Kickstarter, Patreon type thing, but I think we're going to do it on our own platform, so we have a little more direct relationship with the customer and a little more control on that. But yeah, that's the pitch for Fantastic Tanks. It looks like Photoshop has not come back yet. I saw a little arrow for a second there, but I think it would probably be wise to end this. There's a few more things I want to do, but I'm probably just going to have to do that off the stream, because Photoshop is hanging up, and I don't think it's fair to everyone to have a video where nothing's happening and I'm just talking about other things. So I guess we'll end it here. Thank you for joining tonight, and hopefully you were working along with another project and made some headway on that, and maybe learned something from what you were seeing and what I was talking about with this painting. But the plan, up until this is the last week of the year, I've been doing this 9 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night for, I think we started in January last 2020, and I might make a change to the time in the coming weeks. Figure out how to get the information out to everyone. But the with the new year, there's always things you want to kind of work on, and for me that would be going to bed earlier, because I could just work on these like all night, and I'm always happier when I sleep more. So I'm going to try to do that a bit more, and so that may push the time for these to a different slot, or I'll just have to get better at doing them faster. But that is something that may be coming down the line. But yeah, that's it for tonight. And I'll, if I do make a change like that, I'll make sure I'll put some kind of notice out there to let people know. All right, thank you for watching, and have a good night.